Imagine stepping into a VIP lounge, expecting nothing but calm, quiet luxury, and instead walking into a whirlwind of drama, ignorance, and tension. This is the story of how a single moment of arrogance turned into a life lesson that left everyone in the room speechless. Stay with us to the end, because what happens next will shock you and move you in ways you won't expect. Before we dive in, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment your country below. This story will not only entertain you but remind you why respect and humility matter most. The morning sunlight filtered through the massive glass windows of the VIP lounge at Chicago's O'Hare International Airport. The hustle and bustle of the airport outside was a stark contrast to the serene, exclusive environment inside. Soft leather chairs, complimentary drinks, and the low hum of business conversations filled the space, catering to travelers who paid a premium for peace and quiet. Among the well-dressed clientele sat a man who seemed both out of place and perfectly at home. Shaquille O'Neal, or Big Shaq, as the world knew him, lounged in a chair near the corner of the room. Dressed in a simple hoodie and jeans, with his signature-sized 22 sneakers crossed at the ankles, he was engrossed in a conversation on his phone. Despite his towering 7 feet 1 inch frame, Shaq had an uncanny ability to blend in when he wanted to. Years of navigating fame had taught him how to appear approachable, yet unremarkable in public spaces. But not everyone in the lounge shared his casual outlook. A few seats away, a sharply dressed woman in her mid-40s watched Shaq with a mix of irritation and disdain. Her diamond earrings sparkled as she adjusted her designer scarf, her manicured fingers clutching an overpriced latte. She had noticed Shaq the moment he walked in and had been quietly fuming ever since. "Excuse me," she said loudly, her voice slicing through the soft hum of the room. Heads turned toward her as she stared pointedly at Shaq. Shaq looked up from his phone, his expression calm but curious. "Yes, ma'am?" The woman huffed, her tone dripping with condescension. "Are you sure you're supposed to be in here? This is the VIP lounge." A ripple of discomfort passed through the room. Some people glanced at Shaq, their eyes widening in recognition, while others exchanged uneasy looks. Shaq raised an eyebrow, his deep voice steady but polite. "I'm in the right place, ma'am. Thanks for checking." The woman's face turned a shade darker. "It's just, well, this lounge is for first-class passengers. Not just anyone can walk in here, you know?" The tension in the room thickened, and Shaq's calm demeanor didn't waver. "I know that," he said, leaning back in his chair. "I showed my boarding pass when I came in. I'm all set." The woman's eyes narrowed, her pride stung by his composed response. "Well, it's not just about a boarding pass, it's about decorum. I'm not sure someone dressed like that belongs here." Shaq exhaled slowly, his patience stretched thin but not yet broken. "I didn't realize there was a dress code for being comfortable," he said, his tone edged with quiet strength. Another man in the lounge, sitting across the room, finally spoke up. "Ma'am, do you even know who you're talking to?" The woman glanced at him, confused. "What does that have to do with anything?" "That's Big Shaq," the man said, his voice carrying a note of awe. "Shaquille O'Neal, one of the greatest basketball players of all time." The woman blinked, her disbelief evident. "What? Him? That's ridiculous. He doesn't look like—" She cut herself off, realizing too late how her words sounded. Shaq chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Don't worry about it," he said, rising to his full height. He towered over her, his presence both commanding and calm. "I'll let you enjoy your coffee in peace." He began to walk away, but the woman wasn't ready to let it go. "Oh, don't act like you're better than me," she snapped. "I'm just saying what everyone else is thinking." Shaq stopped, turning back to face her. The room fell silent, every pair of eyes fixed on the exchange. "Ma'am," he said, his voice low and steady, "respect isn't about what you wear or where you sit. It's about how you treat people. Maybe think about that next time." The woman's face flushed crimson as murmurs spread through the room. Some nodded in agreement, others watched in stunned silence. Shaq returned to his seat, picking up his phone as if nothing had happened. A small crowd had gathered near the lounge entrance, several travelers craning their necks to get a glimpse of the basketball legend. Word of the altercation had spread quickly, and people were already sharing videos of the incident on social media. "Did you see how calm he was?" one traveler said, scrolling through his phone. "Man, Shaq's got some serious patience." Back in the lounge, the atmosphere began to shift. People who had initially been passive observers now felt emboldened to speak. "That was uncalled for," one woman said, glaring at the offending passenger. "You owe him an apology." The sharp-dressed woman stiffened, her lips pressed into a thin line. "I don't owe him anything," she said, though her voice wavered slightly. Another man chimed in. "Lady, you just shouted at one of the most respected athletes in the world. Maybe think twice next time before you judge someone." The atmosphere in the lounge grew heavier as the weight of the confrontation bore down on everyone. The sharp-dressed woman shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her previously smug demeanor now replaced with thinly veiled embarrassment. Her eyes darted around the room, seeking support but found none. Shaquille O'Neal, or Big Shaq, as the world knew him, remained seated, calm and collected. He wasn't one to escalate unnecessary conflict, but the woman's words replayed in his mind. While her ignorance didn't surprise him, the brazenness of her disrespect was something he could never fully get used to. From his corner seat, a younger man, likely in his 20s, finally broke the silence. He stood up, phone in hand, his face a mix of frustration and awe. "Ma'am, do you even know the kind of person you just insulted?" The woman shot him a glare. "I don't care who he is. That doesn't change the fact that he looks completely out of place here." The younger man let out a disbelieving laugh. "Out of place? That's Shaquille O'Neal. The guy's a basketball legend, a philanthropist, and probably one of the most down-to-earth people you'll ever meet. Meanwhile, you're sitting here acting like you own the place." The woman's face turned crimson, her embarrassment now fully exposed to the room. "I wasn't trying to be rude," she muttered defensively, though her earlier outburst left no room for doubt. Another voice joined the chorus. "Maybe you weren't trying," said an older gentleman seated near the bar, "but you were rude. You judged someone without knowing a thing about them, and you were wrong." Shaq raised a hand, signaling for calm. "It's okay," he said, his voice deep and steady. "I'm not upset. People make mistakes. Let's just move on." But the woman wasn't ready to let it go. Her pride was wounded, and she felt cornered. "I wasn't wrong," she snapped. "Just because someone's famous doesn't mean they deserve special treatment. You all act like he's some kind of saint." Shaq finally stood, his towering presence casting a shadow that seemed to envelop the room. He walked slowly toward her, his movements deliberate but not threatening. When he stopped in front of her, he spoke with quiet authority. "You're right," Shaq said. "Being famous doesn't make me special, but it also doesn't mean I deserve to be disrespected. What matters isn't who I am, it's how you treat people. Everyone in this lounge paid to be here just like you, so why not treat them the way you'd want to be treated?" The room was so quiet that even the distant hum of the airport could be heard. The woman didn't respond. Her gaze dropped to the floor, her defiance replaced with shame. Phones were out, and videos of the interaction were already circulating online. Social media platforms began to light up with posts and comments about Shaq's calm and measured response to the situation. "Big Shaq, handling ignorance like a pro. Class act as always," one tweet read. Another video clip, showing the moment Shaq stood up and addressed the woman, quickly gained traction. This is why Shaq's a legend, not just for basketball, but for how he carries himself. Within minutes, the story was trending, and travelers outside the lounge began gathering near the glass doors, hoping to catch a glimpse of the basketball icon. Back inside, a staff member approached Shaq cautiously. "Mr. O'Neal," she said softly, "on behalf of the lounge staff, I want to apologize for what happened. Is there anything we can do to make your stay more comfortable?" Shaq gave her a small, understanding smile. "You don't need to apologize," he said. "You didn't do anything wrong, but thank you." The staff member hesitated, then added, "If there's anything you need, just let us know." Shaq nodded, then turned his attention back to the room. He could feel the energy shifting. What had started as a tense, uncomfortable moment was now becoming an opportunity for reflection. The younger man who had defended him earlier approached, holding out his phone. "Hey Shaq," he said nervously. "I don't want to bother you, but Can I get a selfie? Shaq chuckled, his mood lightening. Sure, man. They posed for the photo, and soon others in the lounge gathered around, their previous silence replaced with admiration and respect. Shaq took his time, chatting with each person, signing autographs, and taking pictures. The woman, unable to handle the growing attention, slipped out quietly. As she walked through the airport, her earlier arrogance gave way to a sinking realization. She had made a fool of herself, not just in front of a room full of strangers, but in front of a man who had shown her nothing but patience and grace. For the first time, she began to question her actions. Perhaps, she thought, it was time to reevaluate the way she saw the world and the way she treated people. As the woman walked briskly through the airport, her heels clicking against the polished floor, she replayed the scene in her mind. The quiet authority in Shaq's voice, the way he handled her outburst with grace instead of anger, it all left a deep impression on her. She wasn't used to being challenged, and yet, instead of retaliation, she had been met with wisdom. She paused near a row of seats by her gate, pulling out her phone. Her intention was to check social media, perhaps to distract herself from the growing knot in her stomach. But the moment she opened her apps, her heart sank. Videos of the lounge incident had gone viral. Clips of her confrontation with Shaq, followed by his calm yet powerful response, were everywhere. The comments flooded in faster than she could read them. Shaq is such a class act. This woman's behavior is embarrassing. How do you not recognize one of the most famous athletes in the world? This is what happens when arrogance meets humility. Shaq handled it like a pro. The woman's face flushed with shame as she scrolled through the endless stream of criticism. It wasn't just about being caught on camera. It was about the harsh truth in the comments. For the first time, she saw herself through the eyes of others, and she didn't like what she saw. Shaq finished taking photos with the last of the fans, his warm smile lighting up the room. As he returned to his seat, the lounge manager approached him, holding a complimentary gift bag. "Mr. O'Neal," the manager said, his tone reverent, "I can't tell you how sorry we are for what happened earlier. Please accept this as a small token of our appreciation for your patience and understanding." Shaq looked at the gift bag, then back at the manager. "Thank you," he said, his voice sincere. "But it's not about gifts or apologies. Just treat everyone the same way you'd want to be treated. That's all I ask." The manager nodded, clearly moved. "You've taught us all an important lesson today, sir." As Shaq relaxed in his chair, his flight boarding time fast approaching, the lounge doors opened, and in walked the woman. Her expression was markedly different now. Gone was the haughty air, replaced with a mixture of determination and humility. The room fell silent as she approached Shaq, her steps hesitant but purposeful. "Mr. O'Neal," she began, her voice quieter than before. Shaq looked up from his phone, his expression calm but curious. "Yes?" She hesitated, her eyes darting around the room before settling on his face. I wanted to apologize. For everything. I shouldn't have spoken to you that way. It was wrong, and I'm sorry." The sincerity in her tone was unmistakable. Shaq studied her for a moment, then nodded. "I appreciate that," he said. "It takes courage to apologize." "Thank you." The woman exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. I let my assumptions get the better of me. And seeing how you handled everything, it made me realize I have a lot to learn." Shaq smiled faintly, his deep voice carrying a quiet strength. "We all have things to learn. What matters is what we do with those lessons." The room watched in silence, the tension that had once gripped it now replaced with a sense of closure. The woman gave a small, grateful nod and left the lounge, the weight of her actions lifted but the lesson lingering. Minutes later, Shaq's flight was called. As he gathered his belongings and headed to the gate, the remaining passengers in the lounge gave him a round of applause. Shaq turned, his face lighting up with a grin. "Y'all take care now," he said, waving as he exited. Outside the lounge, another small crowd had gathered near the gate, eager to catch a glimpse of the basketball legend. Shaq took his time greeting fans, signing autographs and posing for selfies, his humility shining through every interaction. One young boy holding a mini basketball approached shyly. "Mr. Shaq, can I ask you something?" Shaq knelt down to the boy's level, his smile warm. "What's up, little man? How do you stay so nice when people are mean to you?" the boy asked earnestly. Shaq's eyes softened. "Because being kind is always the right thing to do," he said. "No matter what. You remember that, okay?" The boy nodded, clutching the basketball tightly as Shaq signed it. The story of the lounge incident continued to spread, with news outlets and social media platforms highlighting Shaq's composure and the powerful message he had shared. Fans around the world praised him not just for his accomplishments on the court, but for the way he carried himself in everyday life. As for the woman, the experience became a turning point. She began volunteering at local shelters and community centers, using her time and resources to make a positive impact. The lesson she learned from Shaq stayed with her, a reminder of the power of humility and respect. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts below. What would you have done in Shaq's shoes? Let us know and stay tuned for more inspiring stories that remind us why kindness always wins.